Moves toward equity. Perspectives from arts leaders of color. According to the Americans for the Arts, cultural equity can be defined as embodying the values, policies, and practices that ensure that all people, including but not limited to those who have been historically underrepresented based on race, ethnicity, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, geography, citizenship status, or religion, are represented in the development of arts policy, the support of artists, the nurturing of accessible, thriving venues for expression, and the fair distribution of programmatic, financial, and informational resources. The cultural equity gap. The cultural equity gap arises from a systemic inequity in access to the arts and to positions of power within the arts. So what are we to do? What moves are we to make? The call to action becomes the following: to deconstruct current power systems, to promote, uplift, and foster counter-narratives from and with artists and arts leaders across traditionally marginalized identities and communities with the goal of moving towards creative justice. This demands a systems approach of coordinated efforts across the field to collectively work towards equity. The cultural equity gap. Economic relevance and sustainability gap. Representation gap. Power gap. Diversity gap. Capital gap. Justice gap. The cultural equity gap. Important side note: it is important to note that the term historically underrepresented is a covertly biased way of describing the inherent inequity embedded within the historically Eurocentric arts industry, one steeped in a history of discrimination and inaccessibility tied to colonialism and capitalist definitions of success and value. So what moves are we to make? How do we make moves toward equity? First, the call to action is to deconstruct current power systems. To deconstruct current power systems. So how do we make moves towards equity? The call to action is to promote, uplift, and foster counter-narratives from and with artists and arts leaders across traditionally marginalized identities and communities. My footnote: my resilience is not a permission slip for you to not do your work. My resilience, my creative entrepreneurship is amazing, is dope, it's fly, and it is a symptom of this inequity that we are trying to dismantle. So before you put a round of applause together for my resilience, ask yourself, what moves are you daring to make toward equity? Okay, we can carry on now. So what moves are you willing to make toward equity? The call to action has the goal of moving us towards creative justice. We are always learning and must create room for our thoughts to shift. Shift board structure. Shift hiring processes and pipelines. Shift power. Shift culture. Creative justice is important for the arts and culture sector to embrace if it hopes to move past recognition of a cultural equity gap into active practices of building equity. So, on my perspective, as an artist, as a human, as a woman of color, moving towards equity, how I move toward what moves I'm making toward it, how I dance it out for it, it's not an option. It's urgent AF. And I'm also not going to wait for everyone to get on board. As for me and for mine, I'm making moves now. And I won't be considerate of colonized comfort. I won't code switch for it. I won't quiet it. I won't polite it up. I'm making moves. I feel a ludicrous anthem in my head. Move, get out the way, get out the way, get out the way. So I ask you, what moves you toward equity? Will you move toward equity?